Imagine you're on a plane, flying high above the clouds. You're headed to a destination full of excitement and anticipation. But then, without warning, disaster strikes. The plane starts to fall. Chaos ensues. The sounds of the engines failing, the screams of those around you, the terrifying knowledge that your life is hanging in the balance. And then, a violent crash. Everything goes black. But what if, against all odds, you woke up, alive, surrounded by wreckage and isolation? This is the story of a young boy who survived just such a tragedy. A story of survival, courage, and an unrelenting will to live. A boy who, after surviving a plane crash, walked 10 miles in search of help. Let's dive into this incredible story and witness how one boy's determination changed the course of his life forever. In 1972, a flight from Uruguay to Chile was on its way to deliver a rugby team to their destination. Aboard that flight was a group of young men, athletes, students, and a few other passengers. It was supposed to be a normal, uneventful trip, but fate had other plans. The flight was caught in a severe storm. The plane's engines failed, and the aircraft began to plummet toward the earth. In a split second, everything changed. The terror of freefall was followed by a deafening crash. When the dust settled, the wreckage of the plane lay scattered in the snow-covered Andes Mountains, thousands of feet above sea level. Among the survivors was Fernando Nando Parrado, a young man, just 19 years old, who would find himself in the unthinkable position of having to survive the most harrowing ordeal of his life. Nando, who had been seated near the back of the plane, found himself trapped in the wreckage. His body was battered, bruised, and broken, but he was alive. He managed to escape from the wreckage and began searching for his fellow passengers. The scene was one of utter devastation. Some people were dead. Others were gravely injured, unconscious, or in shock. Nando's mother and sister were both on the flight. Miraculously, his mother survived, but his sister was one of the many who perished in the crash. The survivors, many of them badly injured, were left stranded in the harsh, frigid mountains, miles from civilization. They had no food, no water, and no way to signal for help. They were utterly alone in one of the most unforgiving environments on Earth. In the aftermath of the crash, Nando and the other survivors faced the grim reality of their situation. The initial shock of the crash had worn off, but the survival instinct had kicked in. The survivors immediately began working together to gather whatever they could: scraps of food, pieces of clothing, and the remnants of the plane. They used the fuselage to shield themselves from the biting cold and began to ration their food supplies, knowing they were running out of resources fast. They created makeshift shelters from the wreckage, doing their best to protect themselves from the harsh mountain winds. The most immediate danger, however, wasn't just the cold or the isolation, it was hunger. Days passed without any sign of rescue. The survivors grew weaker and more desperate. Without any way to communicate with the outside world, they were trapped in the wilderness, clinging to life by sheer force of will. As time passed, the survivors faced the brutal truth. They needed to get help, or they would die. With no food and no sign of rescue, Nando made a decision that would change everything. He had no idea where he was, or how far it would be to the nearest town. But Nando knew that if he stayed with the group, they would all die. The situation was dire, and the only chance they had was for someone to make it out and find help. Despite his own injuries and exhaustion, Nando made up his mind. He would leave the wreckage. He would walk. Walking 10 miles through the snowy mountains was a staggering task, one that few would even attempt. But Nando had something that drove him, an unrelenting will to survive. He set out on foot, with only his instincts, the clothes on his back, and his sheer determination. The journey was grueling. The snow was deep, and the cold was unbearable. Nando's body ached from the crash, and his feet were raw from walking through the harsh terrain. But there was no turning back. He had to keep moving forward. Every step he took felt like it might be his last, but Nando knew he couldn't stop. The mountain range stretched endlessly before him, an imposing, inhospitable wilderness. But he didn't let fear consume him. He focused only on the path ahead, one step at a time. As he walked, he kept telling himself that he had to make it. He thought of his family, his friends, and the survivors back at the wreckage. He thought of the loved ones who were waiting for him to return. The path was treacherous. The snow and ice made it impossible to move quickly. But Nando pressed on, driven by the thought of rescuing his friends and saving his life. After hours of walking through the mountains, Nando stumbled upon a small farm. Exhausted, dehydrated, and covered in snow, he made his way to the house, praying that he would find someone. There, in that humble, remote place, Nando encountered a miracle. The people at the farm took him in, offering him water, food, and warmth. They listened to his story, a young man who had survived a plane crash and walked for miles to find help. Nando was able to contact rescuers, and a rescue mission was launched immediately. After Nando's brave journey, rescue teams were dispatched to the crash site. The survivors, who had been waiting in desperate hope, were finally saved. Thanks to Nando's courage and determination, the lives of many others were spared. But the story didn't end there. Nando's incredible feat of survival became an inspiration to millions. His story of resilience, strength, and hope in the face of adversity captured the hearts of people around the world. In the aftermath of the crash, Nando's life was forever changed. The psychological toll of the experience was immense, but he was a survivor. He had walked 10 miles in the snow, with only his will to live guiding him, and in doing so, he saved the lives of those he loved. His survival became a symbol of human endurance and determination. Nando went on to live a full life, sharing his story and inspiring others to never give up, no matter how impossible the odds seemed. Nando Parado's story is one that will live on forever. It reminds us of the incredible power of the human spirit, the will to survive, the courage to take the hardest steps, and the strength to push forward when everything seems lost. No matter how bleak the situation, no matter how impossible the path ahead may seem, there is always a way forward. Nando's story shows us that even in our darkest moments, we have the power to overcome. If there's one lesson we can take from this incredible journey, it's this: never give up. No matter how hard the road, no matter how difficult the battle, keep walking, because you never know what you might find at the end. Imagine for a moment that you are stranded on an endless expanse of water, with no land in sight, the sun beating down relentlessly on your skin, the waves crashing endlessly around you. You have no idea where you are, or how long you've been lost. No food, no fresh water, just you and the vast, unforgiving ocean. This is the story of one man who survived 76 days at sea, battling hunger, thirst, despair, and his own will to live. But how did he survive? What did it take to hold on for over 2 months in the middle of nowhere? Let's dive into this incredible story of resilience, courage, and the strength of the human spirit. In 1991, a man named Jose Salvador Alvarenga, a fisherman from El Salvador, set out on what was supposed to be a routine fishing trip. Alvarenga, an experienced fisherman, had made countless trips into the Pacific Ocean, but this time, things went wrong. It was supposed to be a short trip, a day or two at most. He was accompanied by a younger fisherman, Ezequiel Cordoba, who was less experienced but eager to help. But when a storm hit unexpectedly, their small boat was swept far from the coast. The storm raged for days, battering the boat and the men, pushing them further and further out into the open ocean. Days turned into weeks. What was supposed to be a brief excursion quickly became a nightmare. With no land in sight and no way to navigate, Jose and Ezequiel were left with nothing but the vast ocean around them. Their food supplies dwindled. Their fresh water ran out. The two men were forced to drink rainwater whenever they could collect it, and fish for food using makeshift tools. But as the days wore on, they realized the gravity of their situation. They weren't just lost, they were stranded. The sun beat down relentlessly, and they battled not only the elements, but also their growing fear. Each day felt like a new test of endurance. Their boat became their prison. The world around them was nothing but water and sky, an endless expanse with no way to know where they were, or if they would ever make it home. For a while they managed to catch fish, but their strength began to fade. Jose, always the optimist, kept his hope alive. Ezequiel, on the other hand, started to lose faith. One night, Ezequiel, stricken with despair, said he couldn't take it any longer. In the dark of night, overcome by hopelessness, he made a decision that would change the course of their story. One fateful night, Ezequiel chose to end his suffering. He gave up. Ezequiel died at sea, leaving Jose completely alone. The loss was crushing. Jose had not only lost a friend, but also his last remaining source of human connection in the middle of the ocean. In a moment of deep despair, Jose was faced with the grim reality of being alone, and yet something inside him refused to give up. With no other option, Jose made a promise to himself he would survive. He knew the odds were against him, but he also knew that if he stopped fighting, if he gave in to despair, he would die. And so, he began to make drastic changes in how he approached the situation. Jose realized he had to think differently. Survival wasn't just about waiting for rescue, it was about taking control of his circumstances. He began to use his knowledge of the sea in new ways. Jose had a flair for creativity and resourcefulness. He fashioned a makeshift sail out of whatever he could find. He learned how to fish using his bare hands, even creating traps from the remnants of his boat. His days consisted of making small, incremental improvements to his situation. Every fish he caught, every drop of rainwater he collected, was a victory. He knew he couldn't let his mind wander into thoughts of defeat, and he didn't. He kept his focus on survival, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day. His faith became his anchor. He prayed, clinging to the hope that somehow, some way, he would make it back to land. The days blurred together. The isolation began to take a toll on Jose, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. There was no escape from the monotony. Jose spent days talking to himself, reflecting on his life and keeping his mind active. He began to rely on his memories to survive the emptiness of the ocean, but the psychological strain was immense. There were moments when he felt completely disconnected from the world. But as the days passed, he refused to give in to the overwhelming despair. He began to count the days, marking the time with whatever he could, hoping that one day, someone would see him. His boat drifted through the ocean, aimlessly, day after day, with no sight of land. Weeks passed. Jose lost track of time, but he held on to his will to live. He had no idea where he was, or how long it would take for someone to find him, but every small victory kept him going. As the weeks turned into months, Jose's body began to deteriorate. His skin became sunburned and blistered from days under the harsh sun. His muscles weakened from a lack of proper nourishment. His weight dropped dramatically. But it wasn't just his body that was suffering. The mental toll was far more challenging. Jose had to constantly fight the mental games his mind played on him. Hallucinations, voices in the wind, thoughts of surrender. The fear of death became a constant companion. But even in the darkest moments, he refused to let it win. He clung to the small moments of survival. The fish he caught, the fresh water he found, the occasional sighting of birds or passing ships. He told himself that each small act was a step toward survival. Then, after 76 long days, something miraculous happened. Jose saw something in the distance, a speck on the horizon, a ship. For the first time in more than 2 months, Jose felt a glimmer of hope. With what little strength he had left, he used the last of his flares, signaling desperately to the passing vessel. The ship didn't see him at first, but then, by some divine miracle, the crew spotted his boat. They came to his rescue. He had done it. Jose had survived 76 days lost at sea. Jose Salvador Alvarenga was rescued on February 24th, 2014. When he was found, he was weak, malnourished, and barely recognizable. But against all odds, he was alive. His incredible survival story captivated the world. It was a testament to the human spirit, to resilience, to hope, and to the relentless desire to survive. Jose's journey didn't end with his rescue. He faced a long recovery process, both physically and emotionally. But he lived to tell the tale, and his story serves as an inspiration to millions. Jose Salvador Alvarenga's story is one of the most extraordinary tales of survival in modern history. It's a story about never giving up, even when everything seems hopeless. It's about finding strength in the most unimaginable circumstances. If there's one thing we can learn from Jose's journey, it's this. No matter how dire the situation, no matter how hopeless things may seem, there is always a way forward. As long as we are breathing, we have the power to keep moving, to keep fighting. And sometimes, that's all it takes to make it through.
We are all trying to be the best versions of ourselves, and I want to show you the changes that can be made in this world. Change that will have ripple effects and encourage people to see the beauty in life. To help me, help others in the most amazing ways I can. I have a store linked in the description where you can buy things for yourself, or what I would encourage is to buy a gift for someone else. Show the people in your life that you care and have their best interests at heart. Also, for the best contributions at the moment to the channel on helping and changing lives, is to donate to our GoFundMe linked in the description. No matter how far we go, the change will be felt. I'm here giving you a first-person perspective of the power of change for the better. God is within us all, and I want to bring the power to you the best way I can.